All right, looks like we are officially live. We'll probably just give it a minute or two for people to get situated and logged in. This is our first time on the platform, so I imagine people are going to be finalizing profiles, adding in profile pictures. So maybe we'll give it just a few minutes to let everyone get situated, and then we're going to dive in.
It's those cover images where you have all the options, in my opinion.
that eats up all the time. I mean, luckily I just have one that I use for everything, so I have no selection. All right. Let's go ahead and just give it one more minute. I feel like I want to get it to the lucky 20 viewers, and then we can like officially kind of get started. So we're 18, 19, or we get to 902, either one. Ooh, we got a drop. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and just get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen or make my screen big. Okie dokie. Well, welcome everybody to AWE Nite SF. First time on AWE Live. Hopefully for those who have made it through the profile setup, you have had a chance to review some of the new and awesome features that AWE Live has set up for you today. We're super excited to be on this platform. It's going to be a great place to be able to not only view the AWE Nite SF, but all the AWEs around the world. And there's going to be a great opportunity to network. So, well done to the AWE team for setting this up. So today, I'm sure all of you know, today we're going to be focusing on one of the hottest AW events of the AWE Nite SF events of the year, and that is Tom Emrich's famous 2022 Trends and Predictions with Amy LaMeyer. So welcome back to both of you. I am Patrick Johnson, co-organizer of AWE Nite SF and CEO of Rock Paper Reality. So I guess before we get started, I'd like to welcome everybody to use the chat function throughout the show. Tell us what you're digging. Do you agree with Tom? Do you disagree with Tom and Amy? Are there any questions you have? Please put them in the chat box. We are going to be capturing those, and we'll have some time at the end to be able to run through all of your questions, or at least as many as we can. And so I guess before we get started, let's give that chat a try. How many of you have been to an AWE Live event before? And I'm going to take your word for it. I can't even see the screen right now because I'm in presentation mode, but I'm hoping some people are putting some of their answers into the chat. But yeah, for anybody who is their first time, welcome. For those of you that don't know, AWE Nite SF is part of the Greater Augmented World Expo family and is one of the world's largest computing event series with conferences and expos, including US, Europe, and Asia. And it supports a whole bunch of new chapters around the world. I'm not going to name them all, but we've had a couple new ones that are popping in there. We have Istanbul now, Glasgow. We are all over the place. So welcome all the new chapters, and be sure to check out their events as well, as they will be popping up on your AWE Live calendar. AWE has been around for the last 9 years, or maybe it's 10 years now. I can't remember. It's been a while. Tom actually was the first person to bring me in. But in the past, we had physical event spaces in San Francisco. We have been really excited to open it up to the digital space because it's added in so many other people from around the world to be able to join in. And someday we will bring it back to physical space here and there when it's safe. But for right now, we are definitely enjoying the ability to get the word out across the world. So one of the things that we would also like to do is for everyone to get on social, tweet about it, quote Tom, quote Amy, spread the word. We're really trying to build up the community. It's hashtag AWE Nite SF on all the main social platforms. And you can already start to go on and get your tickets for AWE Santa Clara on June 1st through 3rd. So be sure to go in there. If you're in the neighborhood, go to AWE Asia as well. Shanghai, I've never been, but hopefully one of these days I'll make it out there. But I am very excited to go to AWE Europe on October 20th through 21st in Lisbon, in Portugal. So I will definitely see you out there if you plan on going. Here is a handful of events coming up on AWE Live. I won't read through all of them, but be sure to check them out. They are going to be all good ones. And finally, AWE Academy. It's something that is relatively new. It got started last year. Upcoming courses are going to be fundraising prep for XR startups, HoloLens and mixed reality masterclass, XR virtual collaboration workshop, and of course, my WebAR workshop. And I'm super excited to be back into it, teaching it again in, I think it's going to be the April 1st. There's going to be lots of more details to follow there, but we're going to have a new revised course. So keep a lookout for that one and be sure to join. And feel free to email me as well if you have any questions, or find me on LinkedIn. And that's the end of my slideshow. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tom and Amy. And welcome back. Feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. It's really good to be back here. Amy, last time we were here on Nite SF, we were in different bodies. It was our avatar selves on stage, right?
We were. It was alt space VR, and I seem to remember you had amazing blue hair 12 months ago.
I know. I kind of miss it for this one. We're gonna have to make do without our virtual hair today. But listen, I think we're both really excited to be back to talk about what we're watching out for this year in the way of augmented reality. Over the course of the next hour, Amy and I are going to be chatting with one another, and we'd love to include you in that conversation. So please make sure to use that chat feature that Patrick was talking about. We're going to take a look at what we think is happening in the industry, dig into some of the hardware trends that I'm sure everybody is excited to talk about before heading into platforms and tools, infrastructure, and then consumer and enterprise solutions. So are you ready, Amy? That's a lot to chew off in 1 hour.
I am ready. Let's see how many statistics we can throw out in 50 minutes.
I love it. I love it. We can make that a game. Maybe the AWE attendees can keep count. Why don't we kick things off and just talk about industry trends at large? When you just think about the industry, and maybe even specifically about, dare I say, the metaverse, what comes to mind for you this year in the way of large sweeping industry trends, and or focusing on the metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, last year really was the beginning of the metaverse hype, let's say, and certainly a lot of different people have different perspectives on how one defines the metaverse and whether or not the hype is good or bad. On a personal level, I'm glad to have more people talking about it, and I also don't feel a need for a strict definition. Anything from multiple virtual worlds to that intersection and fluidity between reality and the digital world, I think, can be encompassed into what ultimately we think of as the metaverse. How do you feel about that, Tom?
I like that. I mean, I think we're still in that kind of GUI state with this, very loaded term. But I remember you wrote a really great article in the beginning of this year, depicting how important Metaverse was in illustrating the advancements and innovations in the technology stack. So maybe that's something that's great to highlight in lieu of, us debating a definition, which I think is not the greatest use of anybody's time. How does the metaverse represent a state of where we're at with these technologies to you?
Yeah, and the piece that I wrote was called the metaverse is more than hype. And the point there is, although there might be hype, there's this underlying set of technologies and ultimately an ecosystem, even beyond technology, that I think is supporting the growth that we're seeing in the metaverse today, or in virtual worlds and spatial computing in general, XR. So part of that is the supporting processors that we're seeing from NVIDIA and Intel and Apple, and the robustness of bandwidth and latency support from things like 5G networks, content engines that are more and more leaning towards three-dimensional content creation with Unity and Unreal. The camera support and depth cameras like LiDAR on mobile phones. There's just this whole host of, and the headsets themselves are growing, and obviously we'll dig into that a little bit later. Not to mention just investors and consumers are more willing, I think, to think about virtualness and the metaverse in general because of this shift from the major tech companies like Meta, formerly Facebook, leaning into the metaverse.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. I mean, for me, also, the metaverse is more of like an aha moment or an idea or a vision. And it definitely represents, I think, a realization or, a virtual awakening to the fact that the next wave of computing is not just AR, it's not just VR, it's a combination of a stack of emerging technologies that are coming together. And it feels as though, like you're saying, that the advancements and the innovations have reached a point where we're starting to understand how those pieces can come together. And I think that's why people are really excited about the metaverse. Not to mention that I think now that we're in year 3 of a global pandemic, there's been a massive digital transformation that's been underway, especially in organizations. And I think that catch up that has occurred has kind of leveled the playing field for them to now have a foundation of which that they can look to what's next on the horizon. And I think, again, that's that vision of the metaverse. And so I love that. I love that it is about seeing these technologies come together, realizing that they're at a good enough state that we can understand how they could connect and work together to create this vision of the metaverse. And then also just like witnessing how brands and organizations in particular seem to, or at least some, I'm not going to say all, have gone through that digital transformation to raise their hand and say, we're ready for more. That's what's really exciting about our industry. That being said, I really do think, that metaverse as a complete vision, like a final destination, is at the peak of the hype cycle. It's definitely at the peak of inflated expectations. And it feels like this year will be the same as last year in terms of its hype strength. So I wouldn't expect, that metaverse word to be hidden from your Twitter feed anytime soon, or the news, your news feed. And I think like once we start, or as we start to get closer into trying to figure out how to work towards this metaverse future, this metaverse vision, we're going to finally understand all the work that actually needs to be done in order for, that future vision to come to fruition. And then that's when, we start heading down that natural hype cycle curve, and the real work, has to begin. So I think that to me, that's, I know Ori mentioned in the chat, like where do we think the state is of metaverse? For me, it's we're at the peak of the hype cycle for the metaverse as a vision in its totality. That's not to say that the individual ingredients, blockchain, AR, VR, are independently in those states, in my opinion. Yeah, any other thoughts on the metaverse?
You know, I am looking forward to seeing what, and I'll call them virtual worlds instead of the metaverse, right? And the interoperability of those. And I'm excited to see how that grows over the course of the next year and beyond. But, you know, talking about 2022 predictions specifically, would love to see if virtual world platforms start to interconnect with each other. I think there's at least one out there that's trying to do it already with some portals, but there's still such closed universes. I think we might see more of that.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of to that point is something that really excites me, where the metaverse starts to string together AR, VR, 3D. And I think like that inclusion of 3D is so important. It's the fact that you can do 3D on 2D screens makes for reach and scale, which brands and organizations are always looking for. And so to think about a virtual world where you can engage with it on a television, via a game console or a PC, or on your desktop computer, laptop computer, smartphone, VR and AR headset, to me, that's a critical kind of value that the metaverse has kind of cemented, and it makes me excited about AR because of that. Let's move into headsets and talk about hardware, because it's always the #1 topic when we talk about predictions and trends. Is this the year of the AR headset?
I was hoping it would be, but I think it'll actually be next year. I think it'll actually be 2023. I mean, you see that, Apple rumors have shifted to 2023. I do think this will be a year of growth for headsets. You're seeing, Magic Leap 2 will come out this year, and rumors of Meta having a new headset this year, VR AR potentially. So I think it will be a year of growth, but I think next year might be the year that we've all been hoping for. What do you think? And obviously this is a hot topic in your reality check and top trends.
Yeah, I mean, like the early adopter in me is always like, this is the year. So like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, I want it now. I'm sure that everybody in the industry is also kind of itching for augmented reality glasses. I think the one thing that's kind of been more clear to me is that there won't be just one type of glasses that we're expecting. And we're already kind of seeing this myriad of, and I'm going to use the term connected eyewear. And the reason is because not all of these devices will have AR capabilities, but they will be connected. They will all have technology in some way. So some may just be video glasses that extend the monitor so you can like play a game or watch Netflix. Some just do audio, some just take pictures, some have AR capabilities, some are expected to go, with you on the go, some are expected only to be in your living room or, to stay in your house. And so I think really just like level setting that it's going to be a myriad of different types of AR, or at least connected glasses or connected head-worn devices, not to mention, throwing VR only devices in the mix. And so I think that's like our near-term future. And kind of like piggybacking off that, there's always this expectation that the smartphone is going away, right? So the glasses are meant to eat the smartphone. And I think what we're going to see, as we're already starting to see, is that the smartphone's actually being strengthened within this new device constellation, and that these devices are actually looking to the smartphone at the core of that solution for processing and compute. And it makes sense because, frankly, these glasses are not there yet to cannibalize smartphone sales. And so treating, especially from an OEM perspective, treating this new wearable as an accessory, like previous wearables like watches are, just helps strengthen the overall, device constellation that they're looking to sell into the user. So I also agree with you. I think like the goalpost for glasses is really moved out, but some of the devices you mentioned get me truly excited, right? You mentioned Cambria. I fell in love with video pass-through AR in 2015 when I got to try Sulon's Cortex at CES, as well as VR Vanna at AWE. I love video pass-through AR. I just saw and did a demo of Lynx R1 at SPI in San Francisco. I just like, there's something about it. It feels like really close. And hearing the rumors and reports from various tech giants makes me really excited. So I hope that we learn more this year. I think that's the state we're in, you know?
Yeah, and to just, hop back and talk about the web and the importance of the web as in relation to hardware, in particular AR hardware, right? There was just the announcement this week that somebody had discovered, I think it was somebody in Road to VR, that they discovered that within the latest Safari, there's a whole bunch of WebXR functionality being built in. And that seems to be quite a positive sign for whatever Apple is doing. So so I agree with you. I think phones will be with us for a while. I don't think forever, but I think for many years to come. And I do think that that they will be a basis for our ability to consume three-dimensional spaces or metaverse or virtual worlds and experiences for sure, whether via the web or in app.
Right. And I think that's a key point, right? The fact that you're talking about the web and an app, it really leads into the need for value creation with these devices, right? Technology on its own is not going to cause the adoption. WebXR API is a very headset-driven API, and so a lot of those reports that you're talking about really center around headset web-enabled content. And certainly for all of the upcoming devices, these video pass-through devices or otherwise, they're going to need to prove themselves on a couple of levels, on price, on comfort, but especially on value. If the value is not clear to the target demographic, then it's going to be a hard sell to get these devices on people's faces. And so while we might not be seeing some of these video pass-through AR devices, I suspect that the developer community, select parts of the developer community will get early access to get a head start on creating this value through content. And in fact, that is probably what Meta is doing with the experimental pass-through API for Quest 2 that launched in 2021.
Yeah, and some of that value we'll start to see, right? Because they're going to break out for the first time starting tomorrow, the bottom line of Reality Labs, which is their augmented reality and virtual reality hardware unit of Meta. So it will start to be able to see on a broken out basis, just the amount of sales and revenue that have been going, and the growth that'll happen in that space. So that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I can't wait. And by the way, I mean, the fact that we are talking about a virtual reality device that can double as an augmented reality headset with video pass-through AR is very much tied to the success of VR and the road that VR has paved to even make that possible. I mean, between VR, inside out tracking SLAM and the advancements there, with the work that's been done on the supply chain to get these devices going at scale, through to like just user education, just in general on this brand new device category. I think that once these video pass-through augmented reality devices come into play, they're going to be, the success of those devices are going to be built off all the work that virtual reality headsets have done, and will continue to be, we'll continue to do. But there is we talked a little bit about value creation and the headset itself, but there is a part of the ecosystem that's really critical to unlocking, AR and VR, and that's connectivity and the networks. And I know that you have a ton of experience, having come from Akamai, in relying on network speed and latency and quality. So what in the way of connectivity are you looking at this year when it comes to AR VR?
Yeah, and as part of WXR Fund, we were really closely tied to Verizon 5G Labs for the beginning, in particular, the beginning of the pandemic. We were doing a lot of programming with them to explore that overlap between, XR, AR, VR, and 5G computing, and how that 5G will help, right? And everybody here probably on the call knows and can remember these times, but like running 4G, like we needed 4G to run video on our phones. And that's a really easy way to think about how 5G will enable a lot of this spatial computing. So I think it's going to be key. Even now, there's latency issues, even with just virtual and Zoom. So imagine the increase in speed that we're going to see with 5G. It's just going to help across the board with everybody's ability to consume this in a more natural level.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, there's a direct correlation, as you just pointed out, on the the next generation connectivity, unlocking the next generation of computing. And certainly we need that for AR and VR, especially with 3D that has the asset size alone is something to really take in consideration. I mean, I just in doing some digging, I was like pleasantly surprised to see two kind of flavors of connectivity that seem to be bubbling up this year that I think could really help realize this like dream of getting to the speed and the low latency and also the reliability and connection that we need for AR and VR. So 5G C-band was like something that I just like learned a lot more about just recently, and trying to wrap my head around why last year we heard a lot about the 5G rollout pretty much being complete in the US, although not evenly spread out, but yet that 5G speed still didn't feel like it really rose to that occasion. And I guess at the end of the day, it really is because there are different frequencies on the 5G band, and we're just waiting for that C band to be unlocked. And it seems like we're just starting that journey here, at least in the US, versus the rest of the world. And according to my research, and hopefully that was factual research, Wi-Fi is like going through a transformation, like the biggest change since 1989 with the introduction of 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi with Wi-Fi 6E. And so what's exciting about that I learned was more about it is faster, low latency, yes, but also that reliability and connection, so that your bandwidth doesn't drop when other devices are being used, or just allowing for networking of different devices together really is going to unlock, I think, a brand new opportunity. So I agree. The connectivity is huge
for creators too, right? Like the ability for creators to focus more on being innovative than worrying about compression and latency and streaming.
Yeah. You're right.
That's what I'm excited for. Let's just remove those technical blockers so that we can really innovate here.
I agree. And I mean, all this being said, that with every new connectivity, you need a device that supports the connectivity. So that's another thing to take a note. So definitely watch out for Wi-Fi 6E and 5G C-band as kind of like features that are convincing you to upgrade your router and your smartphone this year. But you're right. I mean, like the developers and creators want to focus on proving that value, on being creative, and so like removing these obstacles that are common across the board is just like debuting the headset and actually just establishing the platform is just as important. And I think like on top of just having more more reliable kind of steady augmented reality and virtual reality streams. What I've learned in my discussions with folks is that when the connectivity gets better, it also makes all of this technology feel more real, because you're able to push the envelope with things like shadows and lighting and physics and the things we take for granted in this real world. And so as this connectivity gets better, the AR VR experiences are going to feel more real. They're going to seem more real, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and audio for sure.
And audio, yeah. Let's talk about audio. I know it's your favorite subject. So what are you looking at in the way of audio for this year?
Yeah, I still think it plays second fiddle to a lot of the visuals, and I get that, but it's really important. I was watching spatial computing experience recently. I won't name it, but the audio seemed so flat to me and not dimensional that it was actually distracting. And to your point about things feeling more real and more immersive, and having that sense of presence, again, whether you're in virtual reality or augmented reality, audio is I think a relatively easy way to make it feel more real. So I'm hoping to see more and more spatial audio, folks leaning into understanding what that is and having that as part of their experiences.
Yeah, I love that. I think, the more immersive these experiences can be, and immersive is not defined as just visual, I think that is just the right direction. It seems like in the circles that I've been talking with as well, that the level of personalization with spatial audio is, possibly the next step with, the scanning of your ears to understand the shape of your pinna in order for the sound to be unique to you is like something that is kind of quite interesting. And so, whether that be for AR and VR, I'm not quite sure. It could just be more for like music, as we're seeing today, or Netflix, which is, widely adopting this. But augmented audio in particular, like kind of piggybacking off of spatial audio and, not just spatializing it, but just changing it in order for you to, when you're holding that unicorn in your hand, hear that unicorn with the real world, and that blending of the two is going to really, I think, be extremely powerful. It's going to help with that trick of the mind that we're doing with, these technologies. So, let's see.
I'm hoping that we see the music experiences lead the way there, because it's natural for them to think about sound first. And so what I'm really interested in looking at over 2022 is how music experiences, music metaverses change virtual music worlds, and I think I think they'll be leaders of the pack.
So if like you and I are at a concert and we're yelling at each other because it feels just so real and it's too loud, in order for us to hear what we're saying, then we've made it. Is that the bar?
That's just it. It'll be even better because we'll be able to turn things down as we need to optimize the experience for us. It's going to be great.
Right. Yeah, you're right. We don't have to be skeuomorphic in our audio as well as our visuals. So I hear you. Let's turn to platforms and tools and talk a little bit about, what we're seeing in the way of platforms and tools. When you're thinking about, the authoring platforms, the development platforms that are equipping the developers and creators to create this content, what's top of mind for you heading into 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have a little bit of a bias here because one of our most recent portfolio companies is ShapesXR. They've had a lot of traction since their latest launch, and I'm just really excited for how usable and creator first that their application is. It's creating in 3 dimensions. In a 3D space, so it's using that, but there is a way to view it from a flat perspective as well, so not everybody has to be in a headset, but there is something to be said for the ease with which it is to create 3-dimensionally in 3 dimensions, right? So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's also just interesting to think about the use of VR and ShapesXR in general. As a way for you to, to prototype and create not just for VR, but also AR, right? Yeah. Because of that spatial capability. And I think, tools that really allow for the democratization of, 3D experiences will continue to be on the rise, you know what I mean? And so, we heard Meta announce last year that they were going to be launching an app in the App Store that would allow for everyday people to put together face filters, right? And on the backs of their Spark AR platform. I think that is currently in beta right now. So it's interesting to think about, parts of the AR, VR ecosystem that are, not just for developers and creators that have spent, significant time on ramping up on how to create things, but are also aimed at folks that can just jump right in, and the tools are, easy enough to just pick up and start to create something and publish it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And what are you seeing in terms of eighth wall and growth in WebXR? That's obviously you're very close to that space.
Well, yeah, I have a little unfair vantage point, having now worked at eighth wall nearly 2.5 years. I think, last year at AWE, we launched our all new eighth wall engine that features metaversal deployment. And essentially that allows for a developer to build a web AR project once and deploy it across smartphones as AR, computers as 3D, Quest as VR, and HoloLens as AR. And so, for me, as these devices make their way to the heads of users, there will be a growing challenge to create content for these devices while having content as well for the devices that we've been carrying around in our pocket and have on our desks for over a decade now. And so a need for cross-platform development, a need for almost like the new responsive web, which is how we framed it at AWE, I think will be in high demand. And the web in itself is a very flexible place to create content that really lends itself well to be made available on different devices, all while hitting just one URL. So I think that's like a big trend that I see, and obviously at eighth wall, we're kind of got the ball rolling, but I definitely suspect that there'll be other places that will see a key focus on cross-platform development. There's a lot of upside to cross-platform development besides reducing the time for development and increasing the reach. It also allows for content to get to these newer devices and fill up the inventory of content on these newer devices, while that may not be the original focus, and the original focus may be where the scale is. And I think that's like going to play a key role in, again, having that value be created on AR and VR headsets. I think there's been a lot of talk and a lot of focus on the web, which has been great to see. Over time, we've seen on our own side just like the growing year-over-year demand for web-based AR, and it feels like we're heading into a time where really the web is seen as a place that you must be with augmented reality, virtual reality, and metaverse. And hey, I don't mind that Web3 is being thrown around, because now my Twitter feed is just like filled with the word web. I think it's a great thing. So these are some of the things that I'm seeing on my side.
So the other trend I'm interested in with content creation is the integration of artificial intelligence and AI, and whether that be with natural language processing or machine learning. I think that might be a trend that we'll see more over the course of the next year. We were meeting recently with, I think it was Volue. They're making Volugrams, and it was a single image, and then they would use AI to actually understand what the rest of the image is and make it three-dimensional. And I think those sorts of AI-based help with creation, right? I think that'll be a trend that we continue to see over the next year.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, it really feels like we're just about to enter a really great time for augmented reality, where the content becomes more complex and more contextual, and that is really the reliance on machine learning and just overall use of spatial data and just real-time data in general. One of the things that we saw late last year from Snap with Lens Studio was the beta access for creators to be able to scan landmarks to create custom landmarkers, which is just like fantastic. I've seen some really great examples of that. And I think, more giving tools to creators and developers to allow for them to use more of the world, like this specific place, this specific thing, this specific person, these specific happenings at this time, is really what's going to create that, magical feeling that augmented reality is part of this world, because it's rooted in those things. And so I think that is going to be a major focus for the tool sets that are provided to creators. And then those creators are going to show us, what this is all about. And I think that it's these experiences on top of what, we have already been seeing in the market that is going to create that value for that end user, where they're going to be hooked, especially, experiences that are tied specifically to a location or specifically to an object. Or even a location at a specific time. I mean, this makes it very special and unique in many ways. And so I think it's going to drive a lot of excitement and engagement overall. You know what I mean?
I do. I mean, we've seen a lot of consumer solutions already. Might as well just shift into that topic.
Let's do that.
that have been. There was a big uptick over the course of the year. One of the pieces that I liked the most was what Obsess is doing with virtual stores and virtual experiences for shopping and e-commerce, and their growth has been great. Again, they're a WXR portfolio company, but just definitely brands know that it is not an option to ignore this new wave of computing. And that is clear. That was clear in 2021. So I actually think that'll continue to grow in 2022.
Yeah, I love that you bring up Obsess, because I am obsessed with Obsess. I have to say, I really am very bullish on portals and worlds and spaces, like virtual portals, virtual worlds, virtual spaces. I've started to think about this like change, especially on the web in particular, but just in general with technology, on like the spatialization of the technology that exists. So like the spatialization of the 2D web, which is on the e-commerce side, using AR for virtual try-on, virtual tryout, but then ushering in the spatial web. So something that's spatial first, or a spatial app. It can be web or social or a native application. And I think that's where Obsess really lives, is in creating these virtual spaces that are they leverage ingredients from the 2D world, but they're completely reinvented in a way that is, much more engaging, more immersive, and gives a sense of presence, right? I think that's like the big thing for me with the metaverse in general, is that you feel more present in those digital moments. And so I think that's really exciting to start to see that. And frankly speaking, I think that's how the metaverse gets put together, is through these, store by store, mall by mall, world by world. Like we need to just start building, and then at a certain point there's enough scale, a critical mass, that there's a need to start to string these things together. And Obsess is definitely doing that.
Yeah, to your point, the value is there, right? It's a clear value proposition. They just did a survey, by the way, that said 70% of the users that went into a virtual experience bought something. That's a huge percentage, right? And so clearly there's some layer of value that's there for having a virtual experience and being engaged at that level.
And you don't even need to just buy like actual things. I mean, we're seeing the twinning of the economy right in front of our very eyes, right? And that is also a very exciting thing. I remember specifically being in like a meeting at CES with a brand. This was maybe, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the individuals asked me why they should be involved in AR and VR. And I said very, very strongly that if your brand's not in there, then like insert metaversal brand. I didn't use the word metaverse at the time, but as your competitor, meaning, in a virtual world, your competitor could just be a brand new creator that has just created an entire line of clothing or soda or cereal, because ultimately they're digital assets. There's not much more that you need to worry about in terms of people actually eating it, or it's not the same type of production. But the brand presence is important, because these worlds are growing in importance, and we're seeing that firsthand. Roblox selling Gucci, and Fortnite skins being branded, Zepeto skins being branded. Bitmoji's done a really great job with Ralph Lauren. Especially the fashion and beauty, sneaker, brands. I think they've really identified that there's a need to be in these virtual worlds, and their brand needs to have a strong presence, because there could be virtual first, brands that could take their place, on top of the fact that they can now just make money in two worlds, and that's just two worlds. Like, we haven't gone to different layers yet. What are you seeing in that way?
Yeah, I mean, retail definitely first and foremost kind of shooting to the top in terms of usage, beyond gaming and entertainment, where we've seen exploration in 3D space for quite a while now. Music, again, right? You're seeing the partnership of the Sandbox and Warner Music Group to create new music experiences. Snoop Dogg was already on Sandbox. Warner Music Group brings Dua Lipa and a whole host of other musicians that can now have their own virtual space to perform and interact with folks. So I think that one will be big. All sorts of brands. Fidelity is now looking into, what is it? They just announced their Fidelity Metaverse Index, right? Clearly, even at the financial level, you're seeing interest in this, metaverse, so three-dimensional space. So, and education, we're seeing some uptick there. I'm going to shout out another portfolio company, Prisms of Reality, who's they only launched last quarter, and the amount of, there'll be more data coming up soon, but the amount of students that have been able to learn math in a new way using virtual reality, using this spatial experience, this immersive experience, it's really, really exciting to see what's happening in that space. So yeah, those are some of the other consumer-based areas that I'm pretty excited about.
That's great. I think education is, all of the industries are going to be impacted by this transformative technology, but just that ability to learn, and that learning kind of shifting from memorizing and kind of like text-based reading and quizzes to moving into more like experience-based, simulation-based is like really exciting, and like extremely sticky. I know we only have 15 minutes left, so I'm wondering if we just like flag to folks that they can put questions in the general chat. I'm trying to keep up here. One of the things that I did note here from Sean was, how about bridging AR and VR so someone can join you in your shopping experience remotely? What's your thinking around like the relationship between AR and VR? Any thoughts there?
I think it'll continue to grow. I think that there's still some technical issues before it's actually truly usable. But I love the concept of that again, that fluidity between the digital and reality. The easier that it is to consume digital content that mimics the real world, I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I suspect that these new mixed reality headsets that have that dual capability of AR and VR will continue to let developers play with those two sides of the same coin. We're seeing already with Quest that you're able to cast using your smartphone, and with Live, with green screen technology, be able to create more of a mixed reality setup, so you can bring the virtual reality into like the real world and vice versa. And like with games like Akron, where you can actually play in VR and then also play on a smartphone. On our sides at Eighth Wall, we teamed up with Air Cards to create Summit Scramble, which is a web game that you can play on a smartphone as an AR while someone is in VR and a Quest playing in VR. And so I really do hope that the developer and creator community continue to explore this relationship between being in a completely simulated or digitized environment and someone being outside of that in the real world, but having access to AR. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I suspect that this will also be driven by just scale. So the more of these headsets that are sold, the more that there's a reason to do so. And then, you know, frankly, when the AR glasses start going out into the outside world, it's like, you know, it's just it's a game changer. Let's just say that was about AR tools. Can you list some of your recommendations on AR tools for creators? You want to kick things off? I know you mentioned ShapeXR on your side. Any others that come to mind?
It's a great question. There are so many out there. I'm interested to see what, I don't think Jadu allows you to create within its platform yet, but I saw an announcement recently that said that they were going to try to be the AR metaverse. I thought that was pretty interesting. And if that's the case, almost certainly there'll have to be a creation component there. Clearly they've done a lot of interesting AR things in the past. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I love that intersection of NFTs and AR. And, you know, I've been watching that space and seeing how a lot of the NFT roadmaps have 3D and even AR on their roadmap. But there's very few AR first NFTs, and Jadu is definitely one of those with their hoverboards. I think, like, you know, just in terms of AR tools for those that may be new and are looking to, you know, dabble in creating, you know, Amy mentioned ShapesXR, which is on Quest, where you can create in 3D. Of course, you know, I would be remiss not to mention 8Wall, which is a leading web-based augmented reality development platform, the company that I work at. But there are other tools that are out there, and it really depends on where you want to publish the content. So you have, you know, native application development through, you know, Unreal and Unity, which are more like game engines that rely on ARKit and ARCore for the AR technology. You have social AR, you know, studios like Lens Studio from Snap and Spark AR from Facebook, and TikTok with their beta AR studio that is just starting to open up to creators for social AR development. And then you have web AR development, which, you know, 8Wall is a good place to come. So if you're interested, talk to me. We have 9 minutes left. I'm just going through here to see what other questions are. But in the meantime, I'm wondering what you're seeing in the way of avatars. You know, yesterday we saw Meta announce the unification of their avatar system, which has been a long time coming. So now you can create one avatar, it's a 3D avatar, and use it across Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, and Oculus Quest. What trends are you seeing around avatars? How important do they play in Metaverse or AR and VR to you?
It's a great question, and I'll be curious to see if you had a similar experience. But to me, avatars went really detailed, and then they moved way back to quite cartoony, and now they're shifting forward again. And I think you're seeing that in the case of Meta as well. Would love to see avatars that cross platforms. I think that's inevitable. Just like you have a single login, you will have an avatar that we can bring across platforms. I don't know if it'll be this year, but I think it's bound to happen. I still have a problem with Uncanny Valley, so I'd almost rather have it slightly too on the cartoon side. But I do like that it seems that we're getting closer to I don't know, maybe more of a gaming type avatar. Have you been on Stageverse? Like, I'm kind of loving their avatars. How about you?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I gotta admit, again, this might be the early adopter in me, but I think Uncanny Valley is like a vibe. So I'm kind of cool with Uncanny Valley. I think, like, I'm gonna just appreciate it as kind of like the art that it may be, and that we might look back to, kind of like, you know, glitch art, or, you know, in a nostalgic way, like the kids do today of like 80s and 90s. But all that being said, I think, you know, having an avatar that has that ability to be used in different applications is like critical, and that is the game that we're starting to see come to light. You know, Snap has their Bitmoji SDK for games, where you can take your Bitmoji into different games in Unity. While the Meta Play yesterday was closed to just apps in the Meta universe, it was still different applications. But really, the company to watch here is Ready Player Me, which is an independent company that has, you know, over 900 partners, where you're able to create and customize your avatar, and then you know, sign in and take it into VR chat or meet in VR or 8th wall powered experiences. So I think avatars are wholly essential to Metaverse, to AR and VR. Avatars do represent digital identity, but not completely. I mean, there's other things to think about when it comes to digital identity and the unification of that, and what that means, and, you know, what data gets shared, and what other objects are you bringing into virtual worlds, for example. But I think we're just getting started on this. And one thing I do agree with you, of course, on is they are, like, I think they have become quite cartoony. But I think that's an okay thing. I think it's like friendly. It's almost like why they put faces on robots, because you again, that uncanny valley, you don't want to, you know, scare people. I find what's interesting, however, is just with watching people on their choices for avatars, and also watching the choices of avatars that are being made available. You know, it definitely feels like we're headed into like a very skeuomorphic time with virtual worlds, where, you know, we want to create a mall, or we want to recreate ourselves, when we haven't really fully realized that we have these tools to go beyond all of that. And I think it's because we don't have the mental capacity to understand where do we go from, you know, where we are today. I remember being in BRC VR, you know, which was a fantastic example in AltSpace VR, Burning Man. And what I loved about it is there was just enough of things that you were familiar with, while at the same time you could fly to the top of the man to, you know, see all of Burning Man. And it was like that special extraordinary moment that took a bit, because you're like, wait, I can what? I can fly? But then, you know, you could still go back to the ground and like walk forever on the playa like you would in real life, if you really wanted to, you know, be that ordinary person.
And I think it'll be exactly that will help people that are less familiar with AR and VR to adopt this, right? Something that they're comfortable with and familiar with and looks familiar, but has extra pizzazz, has extra spark, has extra excitement. And I agree in part. This will not enable us to create anything, things that don't exist. But and we'll get there. But I think it will be a slower pace that has elements of our own reality that we're used to. And honestly, it's nice to be able to see an avatar of somebody that I'm familiar with, and they look like person, right?
Hey, listen, I definitely hear you on that. But it, you know, way back in 2019, I had that talk at AWE called The Death of Reality. And one of the things that I talked about was the death of fixed identity and the rise of a fluid identity. And I think, you know, avatars do really lend themselves to allowing for you to explore different parts of your personality, you know, walk in different shoes, become things that aren't human. I think we're going to learn a lot from, you know, not necessarily being, you know, who we are in our physical selves that are quite limited and in this, you know, matrix that we're living in. But I agree with you. I think, like, listen, look back at the web and mobile. I mean, the very first mobile web on the iPhone was not the mobile web. It was the full web that you needed to pinch and zoom to be able to see, you know, and read what was on the screen. So, I mean, if that's any indication of like where we're going to start with AR and VR, I think, yes, I think we're doing quite well right now.
I agree.
So listen, Amy, we only have 2 minutes left. So final thoughts for 2022.
I loved your phrase that you used earlier, which was virtual awakening. I think that is, I think that's something that's going to continue to happen over 2022. I think we'll lean more towards value and less towards hype. And I think that there'll be an increasing awareness of folks that haven't used these technologies of what can be done in a spatial space, right? In a 3-dimensional space. And whether that's using their phone or whether that's using a new headset, I'm thrilled to have people have new experiences that brings them more presence and more the ability to be more immersive.
Yeah,
How about you, Tom?
I love it. I mean, I don't want to follow that. That was just too poetic and elegant. I don't need to follow up on that, but I do want to say thank you to you on this, what's become now an annual event and kind of conversation between the two of us with the audience, and to Patrick, Myung, Wen, Mike from the AWE Nite SF team, Ori and Andrea and Jetta and team from the AWE parent. And congrats AWE on this great platform. So great to see so many conversations like this that are helping to enrich our communities. And thanks to everybody for being here. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Tom, and thanks for writing your trends on a yearly basis. I look forward to them every year. And it's always great to see the look back at the end as well. Congrats on this great platform and the content that's already being created on it.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.